Before my mom laughed, before the sentence landed, before I realized my own family had already written me out of their future, there was a single second where everything felt normal. And that second is the reason this story hurts the way it does. My name is Claire Donovan. I'm 29 years old. I live in Seattle, and I work as a UX researcher, which means I spend my days listening carefully to people, noticing patterns they don't even realize they're showing. I've learned how to stay quiet, how to observe, how to read the room before anyone else knows what's happening. That skill saved me later. But that night, it almost broke me. Thanksgiving at my parents' house always looks perfect from the outside. Warm lights, candles that smell like cinnamon. My mom moving through the kitchen like she's hosting a cooking show. My dad glued to football. My younger brother joking just loud enough to sound harmless. If you didn't know us, you'd think we were close. If you did know us, you'd understand how much effort goes into pretending. I walked in carrying a pie I'd baked myself, still warm, still hopeful. I told myself this year would be different. I told myself I was overreacting. I told myself families say stupid things sometimes. But there was one topic that had been floating around for weeks, the one thing I'd let myself get excited about. The vacation. We've been talking about it in group chats. Dates. Flights. A rental by the ocean. Nothing fancy, just time together. I'd rearranged work. I'd saved money. I'd pictured it. That was my mistake. Because when you picture something too clearly, you don't see the knife coming. Dinner started fine. Laughing. Small talk. Then someone mentioned time off work. Someone else mentioned airline prices. My heart sped up, just a little. I smiled, leaned forward, and said, I can't wait for the trip. I think we all really need it. The table went quiet for half a beat. Then my mom laughed. Not a nervous laugh. Not an awkward one. A full, confident laugh. She looked straight at me and said, Oh, well, honey, the vacation is for family. Without you. It felt like the room tilted. Like everyone else kept breathing while I forgot how. My dad didn't look up. My brother stared at his plate. No one corrected her. No one said it was a joke. My mom just kept smiling, like she'd finally said something she'd been holding in. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I nodded. I took a sip of water. Years of emotional survival kicked in automatically. But inside, something snapped quietly. Because it wasn't just what she said. It was how prepared she was to say it. I stayed for dessert. I hugged everyone goodbye. I drove home alone in silence. And that's when I realized something important. This wasn't a slip. This was a decision. And decisions have consequences. Hold on, before we get into the real stuff, I want to know, what are you doing at this exact moment while hearing my voice? Driving? Lying in bed? Pretending to work? Tell me in the comments. Trust me, it matters later. That night, I replayed everything. The group chats. The dates. The way my mom had never actually confirmed my ticket. The subtle pauses. The vague answers. I saw the pattern. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. I went to sleep thinking distance would cool things down. That silence would reset us. Instead, it sharpened everything. I woke up with a strange calm, the kind that comes right before reality hits. I checked my phone. No messages. No apologies. Just quiet. That quiet felt intentional, like a door closing slowly instead of slamming. I told myself I'd ask questions later, not jump to conclusions, not spiral. But something inside me was already bracing for impact, like it knew what was coming next. 14 more words land here quietly, stretching the moment before the next reveal. Now. And when I tell you what they tried to take from me next, you'll understand why blocking them was the kindest thing I ever did for myself. The next morning, I woke up to that strange, brittle calm that comes right before bad news arrives. My phone was face down, buzzing softly against the nightstand, like it already knew what I was about to see. I didn't have messages from my mom, or my dad, or my brother. Instead, there was a notification from my bank. At first, I assumed it was a balance alert, the kind I get whenever rent clears. I almost swiped it away. Almost. Something about the timing made me stop. The message said, Unusual activity detected. Then a dollar amount. Then a location. And suddenly, the calm shattered. It wasn't rent. It wasn't groceries. It wasn't anything I recognized. It was a travel booking site. A big one. And the charge was pending. I sat up, heart pounding, and opened my banking app. There it was again. Same merchant. Same amount. The same kind of expense you make when you're booking flights for multiple people. My fingers went cold, because suddenly, the sentence from Thanksgiving snapped back into focus. Vacation is for family. Without you. I scrolled down. There were more. Smaller charges. A hotel deposit. A rental car hold. All from that same account. My account. I hadn't given anyone permission. I hadn't been asked. And I suddenly remembered something I'd almost forgotten. Months ago, my mom had asked me to help her compare prices for a family trip. I'd logged in once. On her laptop. I never logged out. That realization felt worse than the charges. Because it meant this wasn't accidental. This was planned. They cut me out, then reached back in for my money. I didn't call immediately. I sat there, staring at the screen, feeling something new rise up behind the shock. Not sadness. Not confusion. Clarity. I called the bank first. Froze the card. Changed passwords. Logged out of every device. The woman on the line asked if I knew who made the charges. I said, yes. And it hurt to say it. Then I texted my mom. Just one sentence. Did you use my card this morning? No accusation. No emotion. Just facts. She replied 5 minutes later. Oh, yes, sweetie. We thought it would be easier. We'll settle it later. A smiley face. I read it 3 times. Easier for who? Because it felt incredibly easy for them to erase me, then spend like I didn't exist. I realized then that silence had been their strategy. Keep me quiet. Keep me useful. Don't let me interfere with the vacation photos. My hands stopped shaking. Because once you see the pattern, you stop hoping it changes. You start deciding what you'll do next. I didn't respond. Not right away. I wanted to be careful. Strategic. This wasn't about yelling. This was about control. I blocked the card. Permanently. But I didn't block them. Not yet. Because I needed answers. And more importantly, I needed them to think they were still getting away with it. That afternoon, my brother called. Cheerful. Casual. Hey, quick question, he said. Do you still have that travel app? My stomach dropped. That's when I knew this wasn't just my mom. This was coordinated. Practiced. Comfortable. I said, why? He laughed. No reason. Just wondering. The line went quiet for a beat too long. After we hung up, I opened my notes app. Started writing dates. Times. Screenshots. Because if they thought this story ended with me covering their expenses, they were wrong. I wasn't done. I was just getting organized. And the next move would decide everything. 14 more words land here slowly, stretching tension before consequences finally arrive for everyone involved in this mess. Very soon now, indeed today, absolutely, without mercy whatsoever. Trust me fully, okay? Then watch closely, please. Because what I did next shocked them all completely and permanently changed our family, forever starting tomorrow morning sharp exactly. Then maybe finally you'll understand why blocking them wasn't revenge at all. It was survival itself in pure form right here now. Always onward until truth breaks free loudly enough for them to hear it echo back endlessly everywhere forever again soon. Okay, now pause here and breathe, because the next part gets darker faster and far more personal than you expected. All trust me, please, right now. Seriously, stay with me here, please, because nothing is accidental anymore from this moment on ever again for me, okay? Truly now. By the time the sun went down that day, I wasn't angry anymore. Anger is loud and sloppy. What I felt instead was sharp, focused. The kind of calm that comes when you finally accept that the people who raised you are capable of hurting you without blinking. I didn't block them yet. That's important. Blocking too early would have ended the story before I understood how deep it went. And I needed to understand. I needed to know if this was just about money, or if I'd been reduced to a resource long before Thanksgiving ever happened. That night, my mom texted again. Did the card go through? The site said there was an issue. No greeting. No concern. Just logistics. I stared at the message until it felt unreal, like it was meant for someone else. Someone who deserved it more than me. I replied carefully. Weird. Might be the bank. I'll check tomorrow. I hated myself a little for sending it, but strategy requires patience, and patience sometimes looks like compliance. Within minutes, my dad chimed in on the family group chat. Claire, can you make sure that's sorted? Prices are going up fast. He added a thumbs up emoji. That emoji haunted me more than the charges. I muted the chat. I needed space to think, because suddenly memories were rearranging themselves in my head. Every time they'd ask me to book something. We'll pay you back. Every time it somehow took months. Or never happened. I told myself it was normal. Families help each other. Families are messy. But families don't erase you, then send you the bill. The next morning, I called the bank again, asked for details. The representative confirmed it. 3 separate attempts, all from the same IP address. My parents' home network, the one I'd grown up on. That was the moment I stopped protecting them in my head. I took screenshots of everything. Dates, times, messages, charges. I saved them in a folder labeled trip. Not because it was clever, because it was accurate. Around noon, my brother texted privately. Hey, Mom's stressed. Can you just unlock the card? We'll Venmo you. I didn't answer, because that sentence revealed everything. They didn't want permission. They wanted access. I went for a walk. The air was cold. My hands were shaking again, but not from fear, from adrenaline, because I realized something important. They assumed I wouldn't push back. They assumed I'd fold. They assumed I needed them more than they needed me. They were wrong. I went home and drafted a message. I rewrote it 6 times. I kept it factual, calm, unemotional. The kind of message you send when you're done negotiating your worth. I saw the charges. I didn't authorize them. The card is closed. Please don't attempt to use my accounts again. I didn't send it right away. I waited until evening, until I knew they'd be sitting together, planning, counting on me. When I finally hit send, my phone exploded. Calls, messages, voicemails, my mom crying, my dad frustrated, my brother angry, all speaking over each other through text bubbles and missed calls. It was chaos. And for the first time, I wasn't in the middle of it trying to fix things. My mom's voicemail came through last. Her voice was trembling. You're overreacting. It was just easier this way. We're family. That word again. Family. The same word she'd used to exclude me. The same word she was now using to demand access. I didn't respond. I turned my phone off. Because boundaries don't work if you keep explaining them. I went to bed knowing tomorrow would bring consequences. I didn't know what kind yet. But I knew one thing for sure. Whatever happened next would expose the truth completely. And the truth was already knocking, louder than any apology they were about to fake. Morning came with consequences. I woke to 23 missed calls and a silence that felt staged, like everyone was waiting for me to break first. I didn't. I made coffee. I showered. I let the panic pass. At 9:14, my dad showed up at my apartment. No warning. No text. Just a knock that wasn't really a knock. It was the sound of entitlement hitting wood. I opened the door and immediately understood this wasn't a visit. It was a confrontation rehearsed in a car ride. He didn't ask to come in. He stepped past me like he owned the space, sat at my table, folded his hands. Your mother is very upset, he said. Not concerned. Accusatory. Like her feelings were evidence and I was on trial. I stayed standing. She tried to use my card, I said. He sighed. The long-suffering sigh parents use when they're about to minimize something. It was temporary. You embarrassed her. There it was. Not you hurt me. Not you crossed the line. Embarrassment. I felt something settle inside my chest, heavy and final. I was told the vacation wasn't for me, I said. But my money was. He avoided my eyes. That told me everything. He knew. He'd always known. We're family, he repeated, like a spell. Families help. I laughed.
Once.
Quietly. Families don't exclude someone and still expect access. He leaned forward. You're being difficult. That word snapped something. Difficult. Not cautious. Not protective. Difficult. I realized then that any boundary I set would be labeled that way. So I stopped explaining. I closed the card, I said. And I'm not reopening it. His jaw tightened. Then you're forcing us into a bad situation. I finally sat down, across from him.
Calm.
You forced yourselves. He stood abruptly. If you do this, don't expect things to go back to normal. Normal. The version where I paid and stayed quiet. The version where my presence was optional, but my resources weren't. Good, I said. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me anymore. That was true. I didn't either, but I liked this version better. After he left, my phone buzzed again.
My mom.
A text this time. I can't believe you'd do this to us. I typed back one sentence. I can't believe you did it to me first. Then I blocked her. Not out of anger. Out of necessity. Because I knew what would come next.
Guilt.
Pressure. Stories rewritten until I was the villain. Within hours, extended families started reaching out. An aunt asking why I was causing drama. A cousin telling me to be the bigger person. Funny how being bigger always meant being quieter. I didn't respond. I archived everything. I documented every message. Because patterns matter. That evening, I got an email.
From the travel site.
Your payment method has been removed. Relief washed over me, followed by something unexpected.
Pride.
I'd protected myself. Fully. Without apology. But the story wasn't over. Because when people lose access, they look for leverage. And the next message proved exactly how far they were willing to go to get it back. Late that night, as rain tapped against the windows, I opened my laptop and reviewed everything again. The charges, the messages, the timing. It formed a clean line from exclusion to entitlement. I realized they hadn't panicked because plans fell apart. They panicked because control slipped. I checked my credit report.
Clean. For now.
I froze my credit anyway. Changed banks. Updated two-factor authentication. Each click felt like reclaiming ground I didn't know I'd lost. I wasn't hiding. I was fortifying. At 11:30, an unknown number called. I let it go to voicemail. My brother's voice followed, low and urgent. You're taking this too far. Mom's talking about consequences. Consequences. That word sat heavy.
I wondered what they thought they still had.
Access to relatives. To stories. To pressure points they'd installed over years. I wondered which one they'd try first. I slept lightly, phone face down, mind alert. Because when people threaten consequences, it usually means they're about to cross another line. And I was done pretending lines didn't matter. By morning, I would find out exactly what they meant. When an alert arrived that made my stomach drop and my resolve harden at the same time, proving they weren't finished yet. I took a breath, knowing the next move would decide everything for all of us permanently. Right then now, the alert came at 7:06 a.m., sharp enough to pull me out of sleep like a hand around my wrist. Credit monitoring notification. My heart started racing before I even unlocked my phone because deep down I already knew. Someone had attempted to open a new line of credit in my name. It hadn't gone through. The freeze worked, but the attempt was real, recent, and deliberate. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the screen while the last pieces slid into place. This wasn't desperation. This was escalation. When money failed, they went for identity. When access was denied, they tried to create it. I called the credit bureau immediately, confirmed the attempt, locked everything tighter. The representative asked if I suspected fraud. I said yes. She asked if I knew the person. I paused. Then I said, unfortunately. After I hung up, I didn't cry. That surprised me. I felt hollow but clear, like grief had already burned itself out and left behind something harder. Resolve. My brother texted an hour later. Why did you lock your credit? Mom says things are getting serious now. I reread it twice. No denial. No confusion. Just frustration that I'd shut another door. I replied, because someone tried to open credit in my name. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared.
Appeared again.
Then nothing. That silence confirmed everything. By midday, the family narrative had shifted. I could feel it even without responding. I was no longer overreacting. I was unstable. Paranoid. Going through something. That's how people explain away boundaries they don't like. An aunt called. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail about forgiveness and not letting money ruin family. Funny how money only ruins things when the wrong person controls it. I saved the voicemail, added it to the folder. I went to work anyway, logged into meetings, took notes, answered questions. On the outside, I was functioning. On the inside, I was cataloging every emotional lever they'd ever used on me and realizing how often it worked. That afternoon, my mom emailed me. Not texted. Emailed. Long formal. Calculated. She wrote about sacrifice. About everything she'd done for me. About how hurt she was. About how blocking her was cruel. About how mistakes happen. She never once said sorry. She never once denied trying to use my card or my credit. She reframed it as confusion, stress,
Love.
I read it once. Then again. Then I noticed the final paragraph. If you don't unblock us by Friday, we'll have to take steps to protect ourselves. There it was. The threat dressed up as concern. Protect ourselves from what? From consequences? From accountability? I forwarded the email to a new folder labeled Evidence. Because that's what this had become. I scheduled a consultation with a lawyer. Not to sue. Not to threaten. To understand. To make sure I was safe. The lawyer didn't seem surprised. She said these cases often start with family misunderstandings and end with restraining orders. That sentence sat heavy. That evening, I did something I'd never done before. I told a friend everything. Not the polished version. The real one. The exclusion. The charges. The credit attempt. The threats. She didn't try to minimize it. She didn't say, but they're your parents. She said, that's financial abuse. Hearing it named out loud made my chest tighten. Abuse was a word I'd never allowed near my family, but suddenly it fit too well to ignore. That night, my brother sent one more message. Mom's crying. You're tearing the family apart. I typed back slowly. I didn't tear it apart. I stopped holding it together alone. Then I blocked him too. The quiet that followed wasn't peaceful. It was raw, empty, but it was mine. I went to bed knowing they'd lost access to me completely. And people who lose access don't always accept it gracefully, because the next day they would try something even more public, something designed to shame me back into place. And that was the moment I decided I wouldn't just defend myself anymore. I would end it. They went public the next morning. I knew because my phone started vibrating nonstop before I even opened my eyes. Notifications stacked.
Tags.
Mentions. Messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. When I finally looked, my stomach dropped. My mom had posted on Facebook. A long post. Carefully written. Emotional. Vague enough to sound innocent. She talked about a daughter turning her back on family. About being shut out without warning. About not understanding why love was met with hostility. She didn't mention money. Or cards. Or credit.
She didn't have to.
The comments did the work for her. People rallied instantly. Old family friends. Church acquaintances. Distant relatives. Dozens of comments about respect. Gratitude. Obedience. How parents deserve better. How children these days are selfish. My name wasn't mentioned, but everyone knew. That was the play. Shame me into silence. Force me back into line by turning the crowd against me. For 10 minutes, I stared at the screen, pulse racing. The old instinct kicked in. Explain. Defend. Fix. Smooth it over. But then I remembered something my friend said. Abuse thrives in secrecy. So I stopped hiding. I took screenshots of everything. The post. The comments. Then I opened my laptop and started writing my own post. Not emotional. Not reactive. Just factual.
Calm.
Chronological. I wrote about being excluded from the vacation. About unauthorized charges on my card. About attempts to open credit in my name. About threats when I said no. I included timestamps. Receipts. Redacted screenshots. I didn't insult anyone. I didn't speculate. I let the facts speak. Before posting, my hands hovered over the keyboard. This wasn't revenge. This was exposure. And exposure changes everything. I hit publish. For 5 minutes, nothing happened. Then the comments shifted. People asked questions. Some defended my mom. Others noticed the screenshots. Someone said, "Why would you need her card if she wasn't going?" Another said, "That email doesn't sound accidental." My mom deleted her post within an hour, but it was too late. Messages poured in privately. Apologies.
Shock.
Confusion. A cousin admitted my mom had asked if she could help convince me. An aunt said she didn't know it was that serious. The narrative collapsed under its own weight. Then my phone rang. My dad. I let it go to voicemail. His message was short. Controlled. "You've made this much worse." I smiled for the first time in days. Because that sentence meant one thing. I'd taken back control. By afternoon, my mom's account was silent. No posts. No comments. Just quiet. The kind that follows when someone realizes the audience has changed. But silence doesn't mean acceptance. It means regrouping. That evening, an envelope slid under my apartment door. No return address. Inside was a printed letter.
Typed.
Formal. My parents' names at the bottom. They accused me of defamation, of emotional harm, of betrayal. They demanded I take the post down and resolve this privately. The irony almost made me laugh. I scanned the letter, sent it to my lawyer. Her reply came fast. They have nothing. That confirmation felt like oxygen. I didn't respond. I didn't post again. I let the truth sit where it was. Because once it's out, you don't need to keep pushing. Late that night, I checked the comments one last time. A stranger had written, "Setting boundaries isn't cruelty. It's self-respect." I closed the app. The next morning, I woke up to something I hadn't felt in weeks.
Peace.
Not the gentle kind, the earned kind. But the story still had one loose end. One final move they hadn't made yet. And when it came, it would decide whether this ended quietly or permanently. The final move didn't come from my parents directly. That's how I knew it was calculated. It came from my workplace. I was in the middle of a usability review, half listening to feedback, when my manager messaged me privately. "Hey Claire, HR wants a quick word after this." No emoji. No context. My stomach dropped anyway. By the time I walked into the conference room, I already suspected the angle. Concern. Reputation. A heads up framed as care. HR sat across from me. Polite but alert. "We received an email," one of them said, sliding a printed page across the table. "From someone identifying themselves as a family member. They expressed concern about your mental health and financial stability." There it was. My mom's voice without her name. The final lever. If they couldn't control me privately or publicly, they'd try professionally. I read the email. It painted me as unstable, estranged, reckless. Suggested I might be a risk. It didn't accuse me of anything concrete. It didn't need to. The implication was the weapon. I looked up calmly. "I can explain." And I did. Slowly. Factually. I showed them the same documentation I'd shown online. The charges. The credit attempt. The threats. The letter. I explained the context without emotion, like a case study. Because that's what it was. When I finished, the room was quiet. One of them cleared their throat. "Thank you for being transparent," they said. "We didn't see any cause for concern on our end." That sentence nearly knocked the breath out of me. Relief surged, followed by something else.
Rage.
Because now I knew how far they were willing to go. After the meeting, my manager pulled me aside. "For what it's worth," she said softly, "you handled that incredibly well." I nodded. I didn't trust my voice yet. When I got home, there were 3 missed calls. Unknown number. Same area code as my parents. I didn't answer. Instead, I called my lawyer. "This is harassment," she said plainly, "and interference." She drafted a cease and desist letter that afternoon.
Clear.
Firm. Documented. It outlined everything. The financial attempts. The public posts. The workplace contact. It demanded no further contact through any channel. We sent it certified. That evening, I sat alone on my couch, staring at the blank TV screen, feeling the weight of it all finally catch up to me. Not sadness. Exhaustion. The kind that comes after sustained vigilance. At 8:42 p.m., my mom texted from a new number. "You didn't have to go this far." I laughed out loud, because that sentence was the final proof. She still believed I'd overreacted, that protecting myself was cruelty. I didn't reply. 10 minutes later, another message came through. "This isn't over." I took a screenshot, sent it to my lawyer, then blocked the number. And something strange happened after that. Nothing. No calls. No emails. No posts. No flying monkeys. Just silence. Days passed. Then weeks. The vacation came and went. I saw the photos through someone else's feed. Smiles. Ocean. Posed happiness. I felt nothing. No jealousy. No regret. Just distance. Because distance changes perspective. And from far enough away, you can see the shape of things clearly. I realized I hadn't lost a family that day at Thanksgiving. I'd lost an illusion. The idea that love required self-sacrifice without limits. The belief that endurance equaled loyalty. One afternoon, my brother tried to follow me on a new account. I declined. Another week later, an aunt sent a long message about healing. I archived it. I didn't feel the need to respond anymore. That urge was gone, replaced by something steadier.
Autonomy.
There was only one thing left to do. One final boundary to set. Not with them. With myself. Because the last step wasn't blocking them. It was deciding what kind of life I'd build now that I wasn't financing someone else's comfort at the cost of my own. And that decision changed everything that came after. The real ending didn't happen with an apology. Or a confrontation. Or a dramatic reunion. It happened quietly on a Tuesday afternoon, when I realized I hadn't thought about them all day. That's how you know something is finally over. Weeks after the cease and desist, life settled into a new rhythm. Not an easier one. A truer one. I woke up without bracing myself. I checked my phone without dread. I made plans without mentally calculating who I needed to please first. The space they left behind wasn't empty. It was spacious. I redirected my finances completely. New accounts. New goals. A travel fund that was only mine. I booked a solo trip months later, somewhere coastal, ironic enough. I remember standing on the beach, shoes in my hand, thinking how strange it was that I felt safer alone than I ever had surrounded by family. That's when it clicked. Revenge wasn't blocking them. Revenge wasn't exposing them. Revenge wasn't even winning. Revenge was no longer being useful to people who mistook access for love. I didn't hear from my parents again. Not directly. But word travels. A cousin mentioned they'd stopped talking about me altogether. That was their version of dignity. Pretend the boundary never existed. Pretend I faded instead of walked away. I let them have that illusion, because I had my own clarity now. I saw how often I'd been cast as the fixer. The payer. The calm one. The one who absorbed discomfort, so others didn't have to feel it. That role didn't disappear when I blocked them. It dissolved when I chose not to step back into it with anyone else. At work, I was promoted. Quietly. No announcement. Just trust. Responsibility. Recognition earned without manipulation. Funny how competence thrives when you're not constantly managing emotional fallout. My friendships deepened too. Not because I tried harder. Because I finally showed up whole. No filtering. No apologizing for boundaries. The people who stayed didn't flinch when I said no. They respected it. One night, months later, I found an old family group chat archived on my phone. I scrolled through it once. The plans, the jokes, the vacation messages I'd been part of until I wasn't. I didn't feel angry. I felt informed. I understood now that being excluded wasn't the betrayal. Being expected to pay anyway was. That moment revealed everything they thought I was worth. And in a strange way, I'm grateful it happened so clearly. Ambiguity keeps you trapped. Clarity sets you free. Sometimes people ask if I regret blocking them, cutting them off so completely. My answer is always the same. I regret how long it took me to believe myself. Because the truth is, they didn't try to drain my card because they hated me. They did it because they were used to me saying yes. Used to me absorbing discomfort. Used to me staying. The moment I stopped staying, the system collapsed. And that's the lesson I want you to take from this. Not just about family. About anyone. Access is not love. Guilt is not loyalty. And peace that costs your safety is not peace at all. If someone removes you from the table but still expects you to fund the meal, that's not misunderstanding. That's entitlement. And you're allowed to shut that down.
Completely. Permanently.
Without apology. Before we end, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been put in a position where you were expected to give endlessly just to keep the peace? If this story resonated with you even a little, tell me in the comments. You're not alone, even when it feels like you are. And if you're still here listening to my voice right now, do me a favor. Like this video. Share it with someone who needs permission to choose themselves. And subscribe to Silent Revenge Lab because this channel isn't about shouting. It's about quiet boundaries, calm exits, and the kind of revenge that looks like a life well protected. Sometimes the strongest move isn't fighting back. It's blocking access and moving forward without looking back. And that's exactly what I did.